The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has warned Europe of a return to military confrontation. Russia's amassed 90,000 troops on the border with Ukraine, but Moscow denies preparing to attack Ukraine and has instead warned of NATO incursions further east. Today, the Russians arrested 3 suspected Ukrainian security agents. Viktorija Starych-Samuoliene joins us, co-founder and director of strategy at the Council on Geostrategy, an expert in Eastern European and Baltic politics and security. Good evening to you.
Good evening.
I think, Viktorija, there's an important distinction here, isn't it? Is Ukraine and the potential threat to Ukraine, is that a smokescreen for Russia's fear of NATO?
Well, you rightly pointed out that Russia is using an argument of NATO approaching and encircling it while explaining its latest military buildup next to Ukrainian eastern border. Now, Russia might be trying to achieve 2 things here. First of all, it might be an attempt to engage the West in another dialogue, another high-level meeting between, for example, the leaders of the United States and Russian president, such as we witnessed earlier this year, back in June. Or it might be the situation, a risky situation, where Russia might be planning a future invasion in Ukraine. It's really difficult to tell at this moment, but these 2 are possible scenarios.
If it is an invasion of Ukraine, what does Russia want to gain by doing that? Because it will incur the wrath of the rest of the world, won't it?
You are absolutely right. No, everyone would lose from an escalation in this instance. Now, the problem is that the whole narrative plays very well with Russian domestic audience because it allows the regime to conceal other problems which are important for domestic audiences, such as economic instability or economic decline. Now, also at the same time, Russia is concerned about the West and how it is trying to support Ukraine. Now, we know that Ukraine has been embroiled in a military conflict for the past 8 years when Russia illegally annexed Crimea, first of all, and also then started a war in the eastern territories of Ukraine. So there is an ongoing conflict there, which is not solved up till this day, and the West and also Ukraine are looking for solutions and options how this conflict can be solved and how the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country can be reinstalled. So in a sense, there are a couple of reasons why Russian regime is trying now to escalate the situation in an attempt to try to gain some concessions from the West.
Sergei Lavrov said in a speech that NATO was refusing to constructively consider proposals to de-escalate tensions. What does Russia want NATO to do?
Well, that's actually a very good question because it's a very interesting attempt by Russia to paint NATO as an aggressor in this situation. However, the reality is actually different because it is Russia who is amassing forces next to Ukraine's border. It is actually Russia who conducted snap military exercises a couple of weeks ago on the Belarusian territory when we witnessed migrant crisis and also escalation on the eastern border of NATO next to Poland's border, Lithuanian border, and also Latvian border. So it is a very interesting attempt of painting NATO as an aggressor in this instance.
How do you see the next couple of weeks playing out? Someone needs to make a de-escalating move. Where do you see it coming from?
Well, today there was a meeting in Stockholm between Sergei Lavrov, who's the foreign minister of Russia, also Secretary Blinken, who's the foreign secretary of the United States. Also, Liz Truss met with Sergei Lavrov as well. And from what we know now, that all the US and Russia, they've agreed to continue dialogue and to try to de-escalate the situation. However, at the same time, Russian side side said that it will respond if Ukraine is drawn into any US geopolitical games, while Washington also has threatened serious costs for Moscow if the crisis escalates. So at the moment, diplomatic attempts to de-escalate and diplomatic talks are still in place. However, it remains to be seen how the events will develop in the upcoming days.
Thank you very much for your perspective. Very grateful to you, Viktorija. Starych-Samuoliene, who's co-founder and director of strategy at the Council on Geostrategy, an expert in Eastern European and Baltic politics and security.